They didn't even save me a chair at my grandmother's funeral dinner. Not one. 27 people squeezed into the private room at Marlowe's Steakhouse after the burial, all of them wearing black, all of them speaking softly, all of them pretending grief had made them kind. My cousins sat together at the long oak table. My Aunt Patricia sat at the head, dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief that still had the price tag folded under the seam. My mother sat beside her, whispering something that made my cousin Brooke cover her mouth and laugh. And me? I stood near the wall with my coat still on, holding a paper cup of lukewarm coffee from the funeral home lobby. Nobody looked up. Not until the lawyer arrived. Then everyone went silent. He was an older man with silver hair, a brown leather briefcase, and the careful expression of someone who had spent his life watching families destroy themselves over dead people's money. He stepped into the room and said, "I understand this is an emotional day, but Mrs. Eleanor Whittaker left specific instructions." My Aunt Patricia straightened immediately. My mother leaned forward. My cousins stopped pretending to cry. And then Patricia looked at me for the first time that entire day. "Oh," she said, like she had noticed a stain on the carpet. "Claire is still here?" That was my name, Claire, the forgotten granddaughter, the one who visited Grandma Eleanor every Tuesday for 7 years, the one who drove her to doctor appointments when Patricia was too busy, the one who sat beside her hospital bed during the nights when everyone else said they had work in the morning. But in that room, I was not family. I was an inconvenience. The lawyer glanced at me. Then he looked down at the papers in his hand. "Mrs. Whittaker requested that Claire remain present." The room changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. My mother's smile tightened. Patricia's fingers curled around her wineglass. My cousin Brooke whispered, "Why?" And the lawyer said the sentence that made every face at that table turn toward me. "Because the safe cannot be opened without her." For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Patricia laughed, a short, sharp laugh. "That's impossible," she said. "Claire doesn't even know where the safe is." The lawyer looked at her calmly. "No," he said, "but Mrs. Whittaker said Claire knows why it matters." I didn't, at least not then. All I knew was that my grandmother had died holding my hand, and the last thing she whispered to me was not, "I love you." It was, "Don't let them open it without you." At the time, I thought it was the morphine talking. By midnight, I would understand she had been trying to save me, and by the end of that week, my entire family would wish they had left me standing by the wall. My grandmother, Eleanor Whittaker, was not a warm woman to most people. She didn't hug easily. She didn't waste words. She didn't believe in dramatic apologies or emotional speeches at Thanksgiving. But she noticed everything. She noticed when someone lied. She noticed when someone smiled too quickly. She noticed when my mother asked about her jewelry more often than her health. And she noticed me. That was the part my family hated. I wasn't the successful granddaughter. That was Brooke. Brooke had the perfect hair, the perfect husband, the perfect Instagram captions about gratitude and generational strength. I wasn't the charming grandson. That was Tyler. Tyler could forget birthdays, borrow money, wreck cars, and still somehow be called a good boy going through a hard season. I wasn't the ambitious one. That was my cousin Vanessa, who worked in real estate and said things like, "wealth mindset," while still using my grandmother's credit card for lunch. I was just Claire, 32 years old, single, a project manager at a small logistics company, renting a 1-bedroom apartment above a bakery. the granddaughter everyone forgot until they needed someone dependable. When Grandma Eleanor fell and broke her hip, I was the one who came. When her refrigerator stopped working, I was the one who handled the repairman. When she started mixing up her medications, I made the chart. When she had surgery, I slept in the chair beside her bed and woke every 2 hours to help her sip water through a straw. Patricia sent flowers. My mother sent voice notes. Brooke posted a black and white photo of Grandma's hands with the caption, "Family is everything." Then she asked me to send her a picture of the hospital bracelet so people would know it was serious. I never told Grandma that. I didn't have to. She knew. One Tuesday afternoon, about 3 months before she died, she asked me to drive her to the old Whittaker house. Not the townhouse she lived in during her final years, the house. The one my grandfather built in 1968, with the white columns, the stone steps, the rose garden, and the locked study nobody had entered since he died. Patricia had wanted to sell it for years. My mother wanted her share. Everyone acted like the house was a burden, but they discussed it with the careful hunger of people already spending money they didn't have. That day, Grandma sat in the passenger seat with her cane across her lap. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm always quiet around you." "That's because you listen before you speak. Rare disease in this family." I smiled. She didn't. "Claire," she said, "when I'm gone, they'll tell you what you're worth." I looked over at her. Her eyes were fixed on the road. "They'll do it politely," she continued. "They'll say it's not personal. They'll say things were complicated. They'll say you understand." My throat tightened. "Grandma." "No, listen." So I listened. She tapped her fingers once on her cane. "Do not believe a grieving person just because they are crying." I didn't know what to say. The house appeared at the end of the drive, enormous and still, like it had been waiting for us. Grandma stared at it for a long time. Then she said, "Your grandfather made one mistake in his life." "What was it?" "He trusted family to become better people after receiving money." That was all she said, at least that day. Now, sitting in Marlowe's steakhouse with every relative watching me like I had stolen something, that sentence came back to me. And suddenly the air felt thinner. The lawyer's name was Mr. Callahan. He didn't read the will at the restaurant. That was the first thing that made Patricia angry. "My mother's wishes should be handled privately," she said. "They will be," Mr. Callahan replied, "tomorrow morning, at the Whittaker residence." Patricia blinked. "The house?" "Yes. That house is not safe for a meeting." "It was safe enough for Mrs. Whittaker to request it." My mother cleared her throat. "Mr. Callahan, surely we don't need all this ceremony. We're exhausted. We buried our mother today." "I understand." "Then just tell us the basics." He closed his briefcase. "I'm afraid Mrs. Whittaker was very clear." Brooke crossed her arms. "This is ridiculous." Tyler muttered. "She always liked drama." I looked at him. He had shown up 30 minutes late to the funeral, with sunglasses on, and now he was calling Grandma dramatic. Mr. Callahan turned toward me. "Miss Claire, can you be at the Whittaker house tomorrow at 9? Before I could answer, Patricia said, "She has work." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because she had no idea what my schedule was. She had never once asked. "I'll be there," I said. Patricia's eyes snapped to mine. For the first time in years, I saw something close to fear behind her makeup. Not grief, fear. That was when I understood the safe was not about jewelry, not money. Something else was inside, something my aunt did not want opened. The next morning, the Whittaker house looked colder than I remembered. The rose garden had gone wild. The fountain was dry. A plastic real estate lockbox hung from the side gate, even though Grandma had never agreed to sell. That was Patricia's work. She always moved early when money was involved. I parked behind my mother's Mercedes and sat for a moment, with both hands on the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Be respectful today. This is hard on everyone." I stared at it. Then another message came through. "And please don't make things awkward about the will. Your grandmother had many grandchildren." There it was, the warning under the perfume. "Don't expect anything. Don't embarrass us. Don't think you mattered." I put the phone face down. Inside the house, everyone was already gathered in the front parlor. Patricia wore cream instead of black now, as if one day of mourning had been sufficient. Brooke had a notebook open. Vanessa had brought coffee for everyone except me. Tyler was scrolling through his phone with his feet on the antique rug. Mr. Callahan stood near the fireplace. Beside him was a woman I didn't recognize, late 50s, short grey hair, navy suit, sharp eyes. She looked at me like she had been waiting. "This is Ms. Helen Price," Mr. Callahan said. She was Mrs. Whittaker's private accountant. Patricia stiffened. "My mother didn't have a private accountant." Helen Price turned to her. "Yes, she did." The room went quiet. My mother gave a small laugh. "I'm sorry, I don't think we've met." "No," Helen said. "Mrs. Whittaker preferred it that way." That was the first crack. Small, clean, dangerous. Mr. Callahan removed several documents from his briefcase. "We will begin with the reading of the will. After that, per Mrs. Whittaker's instructions, we will proceed to the study and open the safe." Patricia's voice hardened. "The study has been locked for decades." "Yes." "And who has the key?" Mr. Callahan looked at me. I almost said, "Not me." Then I remembered. The storage box. Grandma had given it to me 6 weeks earlier. A small cedar box filled with old postcards, recipes, and a broken pocket watch that had belonged to my grandfather. At the bottom was a brass key. I thought it was sentimental junk. My stomach dropped. Slowly, I reached into my purse and pulled out my key ring. The brass key was there. Everyone saw it. Brooke stood. "Are you kidding me?" my mother whispered. "Claire." Patricia looked like she might be sick. I said nothing, because for once, silence belonged to me. The will was exactly what everyone expected. At first, Patricia received Grandma's townhouse. My mother received the lake property. Brooke received a trust distribution. Vanessa received several investment accounts. Tyler received money that would be managed by a trustee because, in Grandma's words, Tyler has repeatedly mistaken generosity for permission. That line nearly made me smile. Then Mr. Callahan came to me. "To my granddaughter, Claire Bennett," he read, "I leave the contents of my late husband's study, including all documents, personal effects, locked files, and the contents of the wall safe." The room exploded. "What?" Brooke said. Patricia stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. "That is not appropriate." My mother looked at me with a strange mix of shock and accusation, as if I had written the will myself. "The study," Vanessa said, "that's part of the house." "The contents are not," Mr. Callahan replied. Patricia pointed toward me. "She manipulated my mother." The words hit me harder than I expected. After all those years, all those Tuesdays, all those nights in hospitals, all those errands no one else wanted. manipulated. I looked at my aunt. She asked me to visit, I said quietly. You could have visited too. Patricia's face changed. Not much, just enough to show I had struck something real. She was difficult, she said. She was lonely. Nobody answered. Mr. Callahan folded the will. We will now proceed to the study. Patricia stepped in front of him. I want to contest this. You may. I want the opening delayed. You may request that formally. Then I request it. Mr. Callahan's voice stayed calm. Mrs. Whittaker anticipated that. The safe is to be opened today in the presence of Claire Bennett, Helen Price, and at least 2 family witnesses. If anyone attempts to delay, remove, damage, or interfere with the contents, their inheritance is suspended pending legal review. The silence after that was beautiful. Not happy, not satisfying yet, but beautiful. Because for the first time in my life, my family could not simply push me aside. Grandma had built a wall around that room, and somehow she had put me at the door. The study smelled like dust, old wood, and something metallic. The curtains were drawn. A sheet covered the desk. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Above the fireplace hung a portrait of my grandfather, Arthur Whittaker, looking severe and tired in a dark suit. I had only been inside once as a child. I remembered touching a glass paperweight shaped like a swan. My mother slapped my hand and said, "Don't touch things that don't belong to you." Grandma had heard. She picked up the paperweight, placed it gently in my palm, and said, "Curiosity belongs to everyone." I thought about that as the brass key slid into the lock. For a moment, it resisted. Then it turned. The door opened with a soft click. No one breathed. Mr. Callahan entered first, then Helen, then me. The others crowded the doorway. Patricia refused to step inside, as if crossing the threshold might make her guilty of something. Helen moved straight to the far bookshelf. She pressed her hand against a panel near the fireplace. A narrow section of shelving released. Behind it was a steel safe. Brooke whispered, "Oh my God." Tyler finally put his phone away. Mr. Callahan removed a sealed envelope from his briefcase. "Mrs. Whittaker left the combination with me," he said. Patricia's voice shook. She had no right to hide family assets. Helen turned. Mrs. Whittaker had every right to protect her own records. Records. Not diamonds, not cash. Records. That one word changed the temperature in the room. Mr. Callahan dialed the combination. Left, right, left. The safe opened. Inside were 6 leather binders, a stack of envelopes tied with ribbon, a velvet pouch, a small tape recorder, and a framed photograph turned face down. Nobody moved. Then Helen said softly, "She kept everything." Patricia whispered, "What does that mean?" Helen didn't look at her. "It means your mother was smarter than you thought." Mr. Callahan picked up the first binder. On the cover, written in my grandmother's handwriting, were 3 words. "For Claire first." My hands went cold. Mr. Callahan gave it to me. Patricia lunged forward. "You cannot just hand that to her." He stepped back. "Yes," he said, "I can." I opened the binder. The first page was a letter. My grandmother's handwriting was shaky but unmistakable. "Claire, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and the performance has begun. They will cry, they will argue, they will call you selfish, they will say you confused me. Let them. I have watched this family take from you for years. Now you will watch the truth return." My vision blurred. I didn't cry, not yet, because underneath the letter was a bank statement from 16 years ago, an account in my name, a college fund. I stared at the balance. $148,000. Then I looked at the next page. Withdrawal records, transfer authorizations, signatures. My mother's signature, Patricia's signature. Money moved out, money moved into another account. Tyler's tuition, Brooke's wedding deposit, Vanessa's business loan. My life tilted. Not because money had been taken, because suddenly so many memories rearranged themselves. My mother telling me there was no college fund. Patricia saying Grandma had changed her mind. Everyone acting like I was selfish for asking questions. I looked up. My mother's face had gone pale. Patricia said, "That's not what it looks like." And for the first time all morning, my voice came out steady. "Then tell me what it is." Nobody spoke. Not my mother, not Patricia, not Brooke, not Vanessa, not Tyler, because they all knew. The forgotten granddaughter had not been forgotten. She had been robbed. Helen Price took the binder from me gently and placed it on the desk. "There is more," she said. My mother covered her mouth. "Claire, sweetheart." I almost flinched. Sweetheart. She only called me that when she needed me soft. "No," I said. Just one word, but it stopped her. Helen opened the second binder. This contains correspondence between Eleanor Whittaker and members of this family regarding Claire's education fund, medical expenses, and unpaid caregiving reimbursements. "Caregiving reimbursements," Brooke said. Helen looked at her coldly. "Your grandmother set aside payment for Claire after her hip surgery. She knew Claire was missing work." I shook my head. "I never asked to be paid." "I know," Helen said. "That is why Eleanor insisted." My mother closed her eyes. Helen turned a page. "The checks were issued." I knew before she said it. I knew. "They were cashed," Helen continued, "but not by Claire." The room became very still. Mr. Callahan opened one of the envelopes tied with ribbon. Inside were photocopies of checks. My name printed on the payee line, endorsed on the back. Not by me. My signature had been copied. Badly. I stared at it. It was strange. The things your mind notices when something inside you breaks. The curve of the C was wrong. The second T in Bennett was too tall. Whoever forged it didn't know I stopped writing my middle initial after college. I looked at my mother. She was crying now. Real tears, maybe. Maybe not. "I was going to tell you," she whispered. "When?" She didn't answer. "When I was working double shifts," I asked. "When I sold my car, when I was choosing between rent and groceries, when Grandma asked me why I looked so tired and I lied to protect you." Her face crumpled. Patricia snapped, "Don't speak to your mother like that." I turned to her. "And you, how many checks?" Her mouth opened, closed. Helen answered for her. 14. A small sound left my throat. Not a sob, not a laugh, something uglier. 14. 14 times someone in my family had looked at my name, signed it, taken money meant for me, and then sat across from me at Christmas dinner asking why I seemed stressed. Tyler muttered, "This is insane." I looked at him. "You went to college with my money." He raised both hands. I didn't know. Maybe he didn't. That was the worst part. Some of them had stolen. Some of them had benefited. All of them had looked away. And in families like mine, looking away was its own kind of theft. Then Mr. Callahan picked up the tape recorder. Patricia said, "No." One word. Too fast. Too scared. Everyone turned to her. Mr. Callahan held the recorder carefully. "Mrs. Whittaker requested this be played after the financial documents were presented." My mother stood. "I don't think this is necessary." Helen said, "Sit down, Margaret." My mother froze. Nobody spoke to her like that, not in our family. But Helen Price did. And somehow my mother sat. Mr. Callahan pressed play. For a moment there was only static. Then my grandmother's voice filled the room. Weak, dry, but unmistakably hers. "If you are hearing this," she said, "then I have run out of time." My chest tightened. I want it known that Claire Bennett did not manipulate me. She did not ask me for money. She did not ask me for property. She did not ask me for revenge. The tape crackled. She asked me more than once not to be angry. My eyes burned, Grandma continued. I did not listen. Nobody moved. I began keeping records after I discovered that funds intended for Claire had been redirected without her knowledge. At first, I believed it was desperation. Then I believed it was carelessness. Eventually, I understood it was entitlement. Patricia stared at the floor. My mother sobbed quietly. I gave my daughters chances to correct what they had done. They chose silence. I gave my grandchildren chances to show gratitude. Some chose performance, some chose greed. A pause. Then Grandma's voice softened. But Claire chose presence. That broke me. Not completely, just enough that I had to grip the edge of the desk. She sat with me when I was afraid. She listened when I was difficult. She never once asked what she would receive when I died. The room blurred. And because of that, I leave her not only the contents of this study, but the responsibility of deciding what kind of truth this family deserves. The tape clicked. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Patricia whispered, "She was sick." Helen looked at her. "No, she was clear." Patricia's face hardened. "This is character assassination." "No," I said. Everyone turned to me. I wiped my face with my sleeve. "This is accounting." And that was the moment I stopped being the forgotten granddaughter. Not because I had money, not because Grandma had chosen me, but because everyone in that room finally understood something. I knew enough to destroy them, and I had not yet decided whether I would. Mr. Callahan asked everyone to leave the study except me, Helen, and my mother. Patricia refused at first. Then Helen reminded her that interfering could suspend her inheritance. Funny how quickly moral outrage disappears when money is threatened. When the door closed, my mother looked smaller. Not innocent, just smaller. She stood near the window, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. "Claire," she said, "I made terrible mistakes." I didn't answer. She tried again. "You have to understand what it was like back then. Your father had left. Patricia was helping with bills. Your grandmother was controlling. Everything was complicated." I looked at her. I was 17. Her eyes filled again. "I know." "No, you don't get to say complicated like I was one more bill on the table. I was 17. She pressed her hand to her mouth. "I thought I could replace it." "But you didn't?" "No." "And when I asked about college?" I panicked. "You lied." "Yes." "And when I worked through school?" She closed her eyes. I was ashamed. I laughed then, softly. Not because anything was funny, because shame had not stopped her from spending the money, only from telling the truth. Helen stood quietly beside the desk, letting the silence do its work. My mother stepped closer. "Please don't ruin the family." There it was. Not, "I'm sorry I ruined part of your life." Not, "I'll make it right." "Please don't ruin the family." I looked at her and realized something painful. She still thought the family was the people who had taken from me, not me. "I need time," I said. Her face tightened. "Claire, if this becomes public—" "If," she swallowed, "people won't understand." "No," I said, "they'll understand perfectly." That scared her more than anything else. The next binder contained property records. The third contained emails. The fourth contained legal notes. The fifth contained a ledger in Grandma's handwriting titled, "What They Took." But the sixth binder was different. It was thin, black, no label. Helen hesitated before opening it. "What is it?" I asked. She looked at Mr. Callahan. He nodded. Helen placed the binder in front of me. Inside was a certificate of incorporation, a company name I recognized, North Star Holdings. I had seen it before, on paperwork, on property tax forms, on invoices Grandma asked me to organize. I thought it was some old investment entity my grandfather had used. Helen said, "Your grandmother founded North Star Holdings after your grandfather died." I turned the page. The company owned several properties, not just the Whitaker house, commercial buildings, land, investment accounts. My throat went dry. "This isn't in the will," I said. "No," Mr. Callahan replied, "because Eleanor transferred controlling interest before her death." I looked at him. "To who?" He didn't answer. Helen did. "To you." The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the binder. "No." "Yes," Helen said. "I would have known." "Not necessarily. Your grandmother structured it through a trust. You became successor manager upon her death." My mother made a sound behind me. I couldn't turn around. I just stared at the page. My name, Claire Bennett, successor manager, North Star Holdings. Grandma had not left me a safe. She had left me control. And suddenly I understood Patricia's fear. The townhouse, the lake property, the family house, the accounts, the inheritance everyone had been fighting over was only the surface. The real power had been hidden in the one place they ignored. With me, Helen tapped the final page. "There is one more thing." I almost didn't want to hear it. She slid a document forward. It was an internal loan record. North Star Holdings had loaned money to Patricia's real estate firm. A lot of money. Then another loan, and another. Secured against assets Patricia had claimed were fully hers. I read the numbers, then the dates, then the signatures. My aunt had been borrowing against Grandma's company for years, and now I controlled the company she owed. Helen said quietly, "Your aunt is not afraid of losing an inheritance." I looked up. "She's afraid of being exposed." Outside the study door, I could hear voices rising. Patricia, Brooke, Tyler, all waiting, all angry, all certain I was still the same Claire who would make things easier for everyone else. But as I looked down at the records, something inside me settled. Not rage, not revenge, clarity. For years they had written the story of my life without asking me. The poor granddaughter, the quiet one, the helpful one, the one who would understand. Now the safe was open, and for the first time, I had the pen. Nobody spoke for several seconds after Helen explained what North Star Holdings really was. My mother looked like she might collapse. I sat motionless. For most of my life, I had been told I was the family member with the least power, the least important, the least successful, the least valuable. Now, sitting inside my grandfather's study, I suddenly understood something terrifying. The entire family narrative had been built on a lie, not one lie, hundreds, small lies, convenient lies, profitable lies. And now every one of them was beginning to crack. Patricia entered the study without knocking. For the first time in my life, she looked nervous, not angry, not arrogant, nervous. She saw the open binder on the desk, then she saw my face, then she saw Helen, and she immediately understood. "You told her?" Helen nodded. "I did." Patricia inhaled sharply. "Claire?" The tone was different now. Suddenly I wasn't that girl. Suddenly I wasn't the forgotten granddaughter. Now I was useful. I hated how quickly she adapted. "We need to talk." "No," I said. Her eyebrows lifted. "No? No." The room became very quiet, because nobody in this family had ever heard me tell Patricia no before. Not once. The next week became chaos. Lawyers called, accountants called, documents arrived, more records surfaced, and every new document revealed another layer. The deeper we looked, the uglier it became. The college fund wasn't the only money taken. There were trust distributions redirected, property revenues hidden, investment dividends transferred, expenses charged to accounts that didn't belong to the people using them. Not criminally sophisticated, just years of entitlement, years of assuming nobody would ever check. Years of believing Grandma would never expose them. They had mistaken kindness for weakness, a common mistake. Then came the first real shock. One Thursday morning, Helen called me. Her voice sounded different. "Claire." "What happened?" "We found something." My stomach tightened. "What?" "A letter." I almost laughed. At that point, we'd found dozens, but Helen wasn't laughing. "This one wasn't in the safe." "Where was it?" "In Patricia's storage unit." Silence. Then I said, "How?" "The court approved access after the trust review." My pulse quickened. "What does the letter say?" Helen exhaled. "You're going to want to read this yourself." I drove straight to her office. The letter was handwritten, 20 years old, signed by my grandmother. But it wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to Patricia. I started reading, and halfway through my hands began shaking, because Grandma knew. Not some of it, all of it. She had discovered the missing college money nearly 16 years earlier. She had confronted Patricia. She had demanded repayment. She had warned her. And Patricia had promised to fix everything. She never did. Instead, she hid the letter for 16 years. That changed everything. This wasn't desperation anymore. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't survival. This was a choice. Repeated for over a decade, the next family meeting happened 3 weeks later. Nobody wanted to be there. Everyone came anyway, because now there were consequences, real ones. The trust attorneys sat at one end of the table, accountants sat at the other. My family looked exhausted. Tyler hadn't made eye contact with me in weeks. Brooke looked angry. Vanessa looked terrified. Patricia looked older, much older. Then the lead attorney spoke. After reviewing all documentation, we have determined that multiple fiduciary breaches occurred. Nobody moved. The trust reserves the right to seek recovery. Recovery. Such a polite word for people losing millions. Patricia stood. This family is being destroyed over old paperwork. I watched her carefully. No, I said. She turned toward me. It's being destroyed because nobody told the truth. Her face hardened. You think you're better than us? That question hit harder than I expected, because it revealed something important, even now, even after everything. She still believed this was about superiority, winning, status. I shook my head. No. Then why are you doing this? I looked directly at her. Because nobody did it for me. The room fell silent. That night I sat alone in the Whittaker house. The house technically belonged to North Star now. I could hear rain hitting the windows. The study door stood open. The safe sat empty. The mystery was gone. The secrets were gone. The fight was almost over. And yet I felt strangely sad. Not because of the money, not because of the betrayal, because of what could have been. Families don't collapse in a single day. They erode. One selfish decision at a time. One ignored truth at a time. One stolen opportunity at a time. By the time the collapse becomes visible, the damage is already years old. Mine had simply been hidden better than most. A week later, my mother asked to meet. Part of me didn't want to go. Part of me knew I needed to. We met at a small cafe near the river. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then she slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a cashier's check, a large one, very large. I stared at it. What is this? The first repayment. I looked up. She wasn't crying, for once. She wasn't defending herself either. She simply looked tired. I sold the lake house. The word surprised me. Why? Because it wasn't really mine. Silence. Then she added, I should have told you years ago. I nodded. You should have. She swallowed hard. I don't expect forgiveness. For the first time, I believed her. That mattered. Not enough to erase the past, but enough to matter. Over the next year, things changed. Not dramatically, slowly, realistically. Tyler got a job, an actual job, for the first time in his life. Vanessa settled her debts. Brooke stopped posting inspirational quotes about family. Patricia lost most of her business, not because I destroyed it, because lenders don't enjoy surprises, especially expensive ones. Consequences arrived naturally, exactly as Grandma predicted. The most unexpected thing happened 18 months later. I received a package, no return address. Inside was a photo, an old one, Grandpa Arthur, Grandma Eleanor, me, 6 years old, standing in the Whittaker garden. On the back, written in Grandma's handwriting, the only person who never asked what I would leave behind was the one who deserved it most. I sat staring at those words for a long time, because for years I had believed the story my family told about me, the quiet granddaughter, the forgotten one, the extra, the afterthought, the one nobody chose. I had spent so much energy proving my worth to people who had already decided not to see it, and maybe that's the real damage favoritism does. Not the money, not the opportunities, the belief that love must be earned, that your value depends on someone else's approval. 3 years after the safe was opened, I stood in front of the Whittaker house again. The roses were alive, the fountain worked, the porch had been restored, the property now funded scholarships, real ones, for students whose families couldn't help them. Every year, a dozen young people received opportunities that nobody could quietly take away. That mattered more than revenge ever could. As I walked toward the front gate, I looked back one final time. For a moment, I imagined Grandma sitting on the porch, watching, not smiling, she rarely smiled, but satisfied. And honestly, that felt better. Because in the end, the forgotten granddaughter wasn't forgotten at all. She had simply been underestimated. And sometimes those are the people who change everything.